Welcome to the Awaken Man podcast. You join me, Yassine and Pete. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about what it means to be a man. It's really, really simple episode. I think this is something that a lot of guys are struggling with this modern climate, that they really are struggling with what it means to be a man these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can speak from personal experience here. For my parents divorced when I was 13, and then from the age of 13 till when I moved out when I was 23, I was predominantly raised by my mum. And amazing job, fantastic, love my mum, very, very feminine. Although I did see my dad, he also moved away to Guernsey which was a completely different country, for a large part of that. So having a male masculine role model in my life, I didn't have for quite some time. So knowing how to be a man and having that transition from boy to man, never really happened. And I think like a lot of guys, you just end up having to figure it out yourself, and you end up being in late 20s, early 30s, and just a boy in an adult body.
Yeah, I think it's exactly the same for me. Had the same experience. I was brought up by my mum. She had various partners who were brief role models in my life. Like when my mum, my brother's dad, George's dad, he was a ex-SAS soldier. He was super disciplined, super structured. We had another guy who's one of my mum's partners. He was very we didn't get on. He was quite aggressive, passive aggressive guy. And my own father, we only saw him once every 2 weeks. That was the arrangement we had. And I loved my dad enormously. At the same time, because of the setup we had with our family, I just didn't get to spend time with him. And I think a big part of especially my early 20s and my late 20s was fostering a great relationship with my dad. And that was a big part of my own personal journey to becoming a good man. Yourself, Yassine?
I think for me, it's actually an important question to think about, right? And me and Peter were talking about this week with this whole thing about Andrew Tate, right? And Jordan Peterson, again, whatever you think about him, right? But his question was not whether Andrew Tate is right or wrong, whether he's moral or immoral, right? But the question is, why are there so many men today that actually gravitate towards him? Why do men feel that they need Andrew Tate as a role model, right? And like Jordan Peterson said, I think it's because most men struggle with actually understanding what the fuck does it mean to be a man, right? And because we don't know that, right? For whatever reason, our schools didn't teach us how to be men. Our parents didn't. Our fathers didn't. They were too out busy working, whatever, or we were brought up by mothers, right? Society hasn't taught us what it is to be a man, right? And because we don't know, we have to be a man. We don't know what being a man actually means, right? We end up looking for leadership about what it means to be a man from someone else, whether that person is Jordan Peterson, Andrew Tate, or we go to the extreme. So some of us, we go to the one extreme, right? Where we all in the nice guy side, right? Or we go to the complete other extreme where we all misogynistic or whatever, right? And I think it's important to have this conversation about what does a positive masculinity look like today, right? That's neither out there. Meaning that you have to go out into the bush and do a seance and sacrifice a chicken to the gods, right? And sit on a mountain and manifest. But neither does it mean that you have to go out and hunt a bear with your bare hands and shave with a machete.
I don't know. I do enjoy that from time to time. No, I think that was a big part of what I found difficult when I first realized that I needed to change my relationship with my own masculinity. I went on a men's group. So I went to a men's group. I've talked it on earlier podcasts. I had this idea of like, right, okay, I need to get around other men. I could only find men's groups that were kind of full of nice guys. Like, you know, actually looking back now, it was full of a lot of nice guys, a lot of anti-establishment guys, didn't love money. They talked about wounds and trauma, and I was like, yeah, I get that, but at the same time, that this isn't my community. And I think for me, one of the biggest things that served me was being given Robert's book. Actually, you know, we've interviewed Robert on this podcast. Was No More Mr. Nice Guy. I was like, oh, there's no way that when I first looked at the book, I was like, I'm not a nice guy. There's no way I'm a nice guy. And I read the book and I was like, oh shit, I'm a nice guy. I've got nice guy tendencies. There's some elements that I was definitely, oh my gosh, that is actually me. And just then starting to reassess, well, how did I get to this point? And I think what Pete said earlier was like brought by my mum. So I got my model of how to be a man largely from a woman. And that's why I feared conflict. I struggled with things like asserting myself. You know, I think the other day actually was really interesting. My mum was next to me and my daughter was going, I want. And my mum said, I want gets put in a pot and boiled until they're very hot. And I was like, don't say that to Effie. I want her to be able to be assertive and say what she wants. And like, so I noticed that a lot of my struggles came from this, you know, whereas my dad, actually, I've spending time with my dad, he's like, if he wants something, he just goes for it. He's like, he wants it, I want to go for it, I want to work for it. And I think that so many guys have that. There's no male role model in the home, so they start to look elsewhere. And like as you said, if the mass media is presenting Andrew Tate, you know, the who else is there that's kind of on that level of like controversial masculinity figures?
Jordan Peterson.
Well, do you know he's not
Joe
controversial. Joe Rogan, yeah, sorry, Joe Rogan. Like a lot of people have, like a lot of young men like idolize Joe Rogan. They just want to be like Joe Rogan, and so I think if they're presented in the mass media, young men are going to start to gravitate and want to be like these guys. Actually, what is quite nice is like even Hormozy to a certain extent. Like Alex Hormozy is everywhere now. And you start to see these little Alex Hormozy copycats. You know, I just saw the other day someone being interviewed by someone who had the cap, the nose strip on, and guys will just imitate, won't they?
Yeah, but I think that's also because if you look how men and women have developed, right, psychologically speaking, in the 80s and 90s, women had their Oprah moment. So women went to therapy, they did the deep work, they hired the coaches, they went to the yoga and whatever else it was, right, to make a difference in lives. Men, for whatever reason, we've never had our Oprah moment, or it's passed us by. We don't go for therapy. We don't do the deep work. We somehow stigmatize men who do that work, right? And the evidence is there that as men, we're fucking unhappy. We have a 3 times higher rate of suicide than women do, right? We're more likely, 60% more likely to get 6 out of 10 people diagnosed with depression and anxiety are men, right? And I think it's because, again, we don't know what it is to be a man, right? Again, our fathers never taught us, right? Society hasn't taught us, our schools haven't taught us. And again, it was because 100 years ago, 200 years ago, right? Men didn't need therapy. We had role models, right? Our great-grandparents, right? Most of them did hard labor. They worked. They were soldiers. They were warriors. They went and fought in their country's wars, right? And so we had men who embodied what it was to be noble men. Today, we don't have that. Our fathers, for whatever reason, right, were too busy looking after their career, paying off the mortgage. Our mothers brought us up, right? Society has told us what it does mean to be a man, right? So either you're a feminist or you're on the other side, the misogynist, right? There is no in between, right? And I think way too many men are too fucking confused about what the fuck does it mean to be a man in today's time.
Yeah. we were talking about this yesterday, Yazine, and like we're just trying to simplify what do men want today? Like, what do men really want, and like what are they really looking for in a leader, and to be able to hold themselves to a fucking really high standard, and to have like assertiveness, like you said earlier, Ben, to have really fucking strong boundaries, but like holding themselves to a high standard in their physical health and then their mental health, and to be able to, you know, have emotional regulation and emotional resilience, to be able to get their money right, to be able to provide for their family and to give themselves and their family choices by getting their money right. We laughed at this one, but I think it's fucking true. Like, to be hard to kill, right? I think it's definitely like for men, just to be able to go, do you know what? I feel pretty confident in myself that if I get in a bit of trouble, then I can look after myself and I can look after my family, right? And to know how to handle yourself and hopefully it wouldn't, but if the time ever comes to it, right? To have purpose. Like, a man with no purpose is lost, right? To have real purpose and you got purpose, you got fucking drive, and you're going after something, and that's attractive. Leads me to the next one. For guys to be having great sex and to be having great fucking deep love connection with their partner, right? I think simplified those attributes. Like, you see a man like that, he walks past you in the street, you're like, fuck it, the aura there will catch you, will catch any man or woman's attention.
You just describe him as grounded.
Yeah.
You just like
solid.
Solid, yeah, he's rock solid. I think I was doing a coaching session with a gent yesterday morning, and I just said to him, like, we talk about purpose. And I said, what do you want on your tombstone? Watch a lot of Netflix. He's just like, I just said, imagine your son walking to, past your grave when he's 15, 20, 30, and he said, there's my dad's grave. And on the inscription it said, consumed lots of Netflix. And he was like, yeah, I definitely don't want that. And I was like, well, what do you want on your tombstone? And he said, climbed the mountains, climbed every mountain put in front of him. And you could see his eyes light up. He was like, oh yeah, actually, I never really thought about this.
Yeah.
And I think that, like you said there, having purpose, that's one of mine, like big one for me, is to do an honest day of work for me is integral for how I feel. When I've performed in our business and I've done great work, I am a different man at the end of the day. I don't know about you. When I've created and when I've put some great content into the world, when I've helped people move their lives, when I've shifted my own life, I feel psychologically well. And I think that something that you talked about in an earlier conversation was this idea of being both psychologically and physiologically well. I know guys that some of them are really physiologically fit as fiddles, but their resilience, their stability when it comes to challenges in their life, they are the a wind extinguishes a candle but fuels a fire. That they get a slight wind in their life of struggle, they're broken. They don't know how to get up. They don't know how to overcome obstacles. But there's other men, you see them, and that when they are presented with challenges, they step it up. They step into those challenges, and I think that is a huge part for me, is like actually being around other men. That when I see them, like they're confronted with, like, to be fair to Pete, how you've dealt with the struggles and challenges you've had recently. I was like, Poppy asked me, how's Pete doing? And I said, yeah, he's fine. Typical man response. And then I was like, yeah. And then she's like, yeah, but his post on Facebook and the way he's just showing up. And I was like, that's how Pete deals with things. He meets them head on and he goes into them. And I was like, that's just, and she was like, well, fair go. That's impressive. And I was like, yeah, it is. And I think that, like, seeing men do that on a more regular basis instead of retreating, contracting, feeling all sorry for themselves, I think that's a big part of good leadership from men leading men.
And it's ownership.
Yeah.
This, another, a simplified, principle to take on board on, what is a man? It's a man that takes ownership and doesn't fall into being a victim. And whatever the circumstance that whatever cards he's been fucking dealt, like he takes full ownership of that and moves forward with life and doesn't like bathe in the past and bathe in victimhood.
Yeah. I think a lot of guys ask me, like, "Oh, what's the awakened man?" And they're like, because you hear the word awakened and you kind of think, "Oh, is it this kind of woo-woo thing?" That's like, but no, it's not. It's a guy that's had a wake-up call. A guy that's had a wake-up call. He's either had some relationship struggle, maybe a health struggle. It could be a business struggle, where business breakdown. He's been given that wake-up call, or you can see it on the horizon.
Yeah, I'd say for me, I'll just jump in here because like I had a wake-up call, right? I had like a business breakdown, but like it wasn't real clear to me. What was clear to me, like when my business didn't break down. I left my own business as such, right? But what started to become clear to me was I just wasn't living in alignment. Like I wasn't living in true purpose. I was just going through the motions and building this business. And then I was like, hang on a minute. We've started this program called The Awakened Man. And we're teaching all these guys to make fucking big power moves and go after what they really fucking want in life. Yet deep in my gut, I'm feeling right now that me building this architectural studio just isn't truly in alignment. And what is in alignment with me is to help others, is to consistently heal myself and the lessons that I learn to then bring that to the world and help others heal, right? And help others grow and self-actualize and then go into self-transcendence when I get to help others. And I was like, that is my fucking purpose. And how out of integrity of me to not make the power moves, right? And for me, that's like another attribute for, what is a man? To be true to what he really wants, to have integrity, and then to make a fucking power move.
Yeah, I think you can probably attest to this as well. How many men do we speak to that are living how did you say it? Living with the ladder up against the wrong.
Yeah.
How do you articulate it?
So most men, especially in the corporate world, right? They've achieved a shit ton of success. They've got the corporate title. They make a ton of money. They drive the nice car, sports car. They have the trophy wife. They live in a big house, right? And then one day you wake up and you say to yourself, you know what? I've actually climbed to the top of the ladder, right? And then you hit, at the same moment you hit with this realization that, holy fuck, the ladder was placed against along the wrong wall. And so all of this time you spent climbing up the ladder, right? It was not where you wanted to be. And so now you're at the top of your life, you're at the top of financial success, right? You have all of those things and you realize that all of those things are not what I actually wanted. Because I've literally climbed the wrong wall.
Is that like midlife crisis kicking in there?
Yes.
I think a lot of guys in those moments, they don't know where to turn because they don't feel broken. Like, I don't think we don't attract broken men.
No.
We don't promote and we don't want to work with broken men. We want to work with that guy. Like a lot of our guys have gone through that wake up call. They've either had a relationship struggle and they're not being the man that they want to, their partner feels attracted to. They're not being the man that they want to be for the kids. They're not being the man that they know they can be, that can hold strong boundaries, have hard conversations, and have the financial disciplines. And these are all things I've struggled with. And they see that, and they're either wise enough to say, do you know what, I need to get around other men to show me how to get and how to move forward with this. I need some good role models. I need to get some good elevation here. Or they've come through something. It could be that they've come through this part where they've been trying to do it on their own, had very little success. It's not been fast enough, and they want to speed it up. And do you know what? I need to do this quicker because this is taking way longer than I thought. They're in the wilderness with it all, and I think that being a modern man is actually seeking the right space to explore that masculinity. Like, what does it really mean for me to be a man? Well, for me, it was bringing a lot more structure and discipline, like we talked about in the last podcast, to my finances. It meant having hard conversations and not being a nice guy. You know, that was what I found. I was like, that's the work. But I would never have found that without being around a group of men. I never would have found that. I would have struggled with it a hell of a lot longer. And actually sorting it would have taken a lot longer too. So,
Yeah, so I think there's this thing that psychologists call the disquiet in men, right? And it's about what we talked about. So David Brooks talks about this idea that there's two mountains in life, right? So most men, you spend the first part of your life climbing the first mountain, and the first mountain is about achieving the fame, the success, the job title, the money in the bank, the trophy wife, the big house, this nice car, right? And then you get to the top of the mountain and you realize, holy fuck, right? Is this what life is all about? What if I died now? What if I fell off the mountain, right? Who the fuck would remember me? Have I actually left a legacy, right? Or am I all just going to be a nameless headstone in a graveyard, right? And at this point, most men have an existential crisis, right? We suddenly become disquiet, right? We start questioning, like, what the fuck is my role in life? Is there more to life than just the material success, right? Who am I? What was I put on earth to do, right? And I think for most men, right, are in that position that we want to know that if I die tomorrow, right, my life actually mattered, that I actually meant something, right, that I actually made a difference to someone else's life, that my kids would say at my eulogy, wow, you know what, he was a fucking great father. My wife or partner would say, wow, he was a fucking great husband. My parents would say, we could never have asked for a better son than that, right? My siblings would say, wow, he was the best sibling anyone could ever ask for, right? And I think, which is what most men struggle with, we don't know how to become that type of man, right? We don't know because no one's taught us, right? How to embody like the characteristics, right? And the values and the virtues, right? Where if I died tomorrow, right, people would be, holy fuck, you know what? He actually made a difference in the world.
I think it's coming back to the same thing we talked about in the last conversation, is being that one man, is deciding, do you know what, I'm going to lead my life, I'm going to lead the people around me, and I'm going to make a choice about that. And I think this is what a lot of guys are doing, is actually realising that the wake-up call is, hey, hang on a second, I don't need to be a victim to my circumstances. I can be the owner of my business. I can be the owner of my life, and I can start to create the life that I really want. And I think that's the big shift that a lot of guys make, is that in this discovery of their own masculinity, they rediscover their own power to make choices. And I think that's what I've noticed about myself, and I've noticed it about the guys that we've worked with, is that they're all of a sudden they're starting to make choices to really flourish in their lives. And yeah, it's just been magical to watch guys. You know, I think, you know, when Pete shared before about helping guys in through this process, I couldn't find anywhere that did this, what we do. I couldn't find a space to explore my masculinity like we have with guys. There wasn't one, because there wasn't the frequency, there wasn't the availability. And I think that one of the biggest and most powerful things that I've noticed is that when guys are around guys every single day, they get to see how other guys show up. You know, you've seen sharing some of the levels of depths of, you know, the most high performing men in the world every single day. You're like, hang on a second, there's a standard that I can choose to take myself to, so long as I embody all these virtues that I can just choose to as well.
The other thing, you know, you're talking there about you were searching for a group, and then you couldn't find that group, and so you ended up, you know, we ended up creating this group, right, and this project. And I had the same thing. I went from mastermind to mastermind, looking for role models, I actually wasn't looking for a men's group. Fucking never knew the word existed. It wasn't like I'm looking for men's work. I'd never even heard of it. I was just looking to get around high level people, right? And you know, I attended some great masterminds and so on, but never really found what I was truly looking for. And we ended up creating this. And what I love about what we've created is that there's no real like bullshit with what we're doing. Like I have built businesses, Yazine has built businesses, and so has Ben. Like Ben has been through shit with his relationships and has been through divorce. I am now going through that, right? And Yazine has been through, you know, trials and tribulations. And like, it's not, yeah, Yazine has read about 27 million books, literally does read a book a day, and that's his discipline. But we haven't just read the books. Like it is about actually being in the trenches and going through all the shit and then learning all the lessons and then going, right, guys, this is what we've learned, going through divorce, going through and coming out the other side like a better man and learning from it, and then being able to help others.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of guys are looking for when they're lost, is a guide, like a guide. And if you are a guy and you are struggling with your masculinity and you're looking for a guide, find someone who's been through what you're trying to navigate through.
Well, just join our program.
Yeah.
Just come and join one of our programs. Like Heroic Man is our latest program. It was released, 45 days ago? It's phenomenal, right? There's how many guys in there? 40 guys, 50 guys now.
Mm-hmm.
And every day there is a 15-minute coaching session from us guys here, right? Talking around masculinity, talking around like how to build wealth, just principles of masculinity, principles on wealth, principles on like forming incredible relationships, principles on health and energy, discipline, resilience, and so forth. And like, you know, the guys in that group, they're getting that every single day, and you can see it's fucking awesome. You can see their lives elevating and like how much progress they're making.
Yeah, we even talked even on our last couple of podcasts about the idea of status. And actually, when a lot of guys have told me they listened to that podcast, they didn't want to buy into that idea. Did you notice that?
No.
There was a lot of guys that we did an episode on. So like, if you listen to this podcast now, go back about maybe 4 or 5 episodes, and we do like why men need to elevate their status. And a lot of guys said, when I first listened to that, I had to listen to it again because I was so triggered.
Good.
Yeah, and like that was the thing. It was like they don't want to buy into this idea that you need other men. That's
Yeah.
like
that podcast was fire. I knew it would trigger people. It was great.
But the guys didn't want to. They didn't want to admit to wanting to be part of a, get fit, be part of a group, work on their emotional intelligence, because it's probably all these things that they know deep down that they struggle with. And the only real, the only real way to do this and to work on, simultaneously work on their masculinity is around other men.
Yeah. And listen, guys, if you're listening to this and you want to come and join our program, I mean, the cost of it right now, less than a cup of coffee a day. Go to awakenman.org. There's a link on there. Heroic Man. Have a read. It's got all the information you need. You can click join. It take you straight into the community.
Thank you so much for listening in today, guys. Take care.
Cheers, guys.
Guys.